Welcome back. The political party ActionSA says it's going ahead with its legal challenge to the decision by the police oversight body IPID to classify its report into the way Presidential Protection Unit members behaved during the Phala Phala scandal as top secret. The scandal saw $580,000 being stolen from the sofa of President Cyril Ramaphosa. He said he told the head of his protection unit to lodge a charge of theft with the police. There was no independent investigation of that charge. Eventually, IPID investigated whether any of Ramaphosa's VIP protection officers, who are police officers, had failed in their duty to report the theft. The chair of ActionSA is Micheal Beaumont. Michael, good afternoon to you, and thanks so much for coming in. What do you want from IPID? What do you want? Why do you want the report of their investigation?
We want transparency, we want accountability, Stephen, and I think these are two things that have been kept from the South African people throughout this entire Phala Phala scandal. IPID has gone and classified this investigation as top secret, and they have cited two provisions of the Minimum Information Security Standards policy for that basis. The first is that it may cause disruption with another institution of government. Now, that's an astonishing claim. In other words, one government institution may offend another, and the South African people don't have the right to know what's in that document. Or it might disrupt an ongoing investigation, which is a tenuous claim 6 years on, when there's been no action of any variety. Ultimately, what we're concerned, there's been a cover-up. Those Presidential Protection Unit members are charged with the protection of the president, and they investigated that crime with our concern being that they were protecting the president about the $580,000 he had stuffed in his couch, rather than independently investigating a crime of robbery like the detective services of our country would ordinarily do. We want to know what is in that report, either because we believe there was political instructions given to them to go ahead and operate outside of the law, or there needs to be accountability for these law enforcement officers operating as a law unto themselves. But we've seen it too many times in our country where law enforcement officers get protected for doing the wrong things because they're covering up for their political masters.
So I presume, and we've seen in the past, IPID will conduct an investigation. They'll, in most cases, make the investigation public, which has not happened here. But there will also be action taken against the officers involved. Do you know if action was actually taken against the officers involved, which might tell us what was in the report?
We don't know. We've only heard what the police minister has said in public statements. He's indicated that the report is an exoneration of these individuals, but we will never know because we haven't read what is in the contents of this report. And this is the real concern, Stephen, is because if there's been a whitewash, and if this report is the proverbial fire pool in Nkandla to classical music playing in the background, there needs to be accountability. Institutions like ActionSA and Parliament need to be able to take this up, challenge that report in the courts if necessary, and ensure that it's dealt with. Because one of the things that people forget about the story is that IPID's investigation was occasioned by a report from the public protector who did find that those PPU members operated outside of their legal ambit and investigated without opening a police docket, which is illegal.
So, I mean, this would basically mean, and we have to keep remembering that these protection officers are police officers. They have a duty to not just the person they're protecting, but to ensure that the law is followed at all times. They would then be accused, the claim would be that they did what the president asked them to do rather than actually investigate. And that, it would seem from the public protector's findings, would be the finding of IPID.
Well, this is what we want to dig into. But ultimately, again, we keep seeing in our country where bodyguards of political elite are able to run around, beat up people in the streets, investigate crimes without opening dockets. And there's no accountability because clearly they're operating at the behest of their political masters, or if not, to the benefit or protection of them. That's why it's critical that we look into this. But we also need to have a broader conversation, Stephen, is that this is the last beachhead for anyone who's looking for accountability in the Phala Phala matter. The public protector whitewashed her report in respect to this issue. The governor of the Reserve Bank says apparently it's fine to have $580,000 in your furniture. And really, this is going to be the last opportunity to ensure there is accountability in a parliament where 70% of parliament is now in the GNU and their mouths are too full to speak up for the South African people.
Okay, so, I mean, IPID is following what they call a Minimum Information Standards policy. And as I understand it, that's actually a cabinet document. That allows them, they say, to just make this decision. They didn't consult with anybody, by the way, they just decided. Do you believe that whole policy, the Minimum Information Standards policy, might be problematic?
Without any question, and our legal challenge is going to adopt a three-pronged approach. So we've obviously already discussed how we're going to challenge the rationality of the classification of this document, as well as asking the courts to provide it to us. But part of what we want to challenge is the constitutionality of myths. That's what it's called, if you'll forgive the sense of humor. Because what you're really dealing with now is a situation where a wide range of government actors, anyone who authors a government report basically, can classify that report as top secret. And the policies, the conditions for them to do so are so wide-ranging that there is no ability to hold accountable those officials in the way in which they classify reports. To say that a report can be classified top secret because it may cause disruption in the relations between government institutions. Why, as the South African citizens, do we care if government institutions are fighting with one another? We have a constitution. It says that transparency and accountability are fundamental principles of our democracy, and it can't be swept away because we're really worried about offending the feelings of somebody working in the presidency. That can't be a concern, and I think if you take that policy before a judge, they're going to laugh government out of court for it.
I mean, a lot of things are going to happen, and this could take quite some time. I mean, we've seen court cases in the past take 2 or 3 years by the time you've managed all the appeals. You do run the risk that it might all be academic, by which I mean it may well be 2029 before we finally get a result, and Cyril Ramaphosa may no longer be the president.
We hope it won't be academic, certainly, but you're right. Our court system is slow, and the wheels of justice grind particularly slow in the North Gauteng High Court. From our point of view, we will obviously pursue this as quickly as we can. But we must understand the value goes in terms of setting precedent, because there will be a president after Cyril Ramaphosa. And we need to make sure that precedent is being set in our country that ensures that these kind of things can't continue to happen. Because we have a long pattern in our country of presidents who are protected from accountability by their political parties, in this context, by a multitude of political parties in the GNU. And really, you need court judgments that set precedents that allow us to enforce these principles of accountability and transparency in the future.
You made an important point a moment ago about the fact that many of our parties are now all in the same national coalition together. Some of the bigger parties outside would be MK and the EFF. It's interesting to me that you seem to be the only one taking this on. I would have thought that, I mean, I realise you don't agree with MK on many things, but I would have thought this might be something that you would all agree on.
Well, certainly opposition is a really important space right now, because when you've got a government that is 70% of parliament, the scope for abuse is too large. I think certainly the larger parties in the opposition have been disorderly throughout this process and chaotic, replacing leaders all the time. And in many ways, ActionSA has emerged as an unofficial opposition in Parliament. Our MPs are posing more questions than any other party, bringing more private members' bills, and instituting these kind of proceedings in a way totally beyond our size in Parliament. But that's the work we want to do. We want to be an effective and constructive opposition. We want to support where we can and oppose when we need to. And at the end of the day, that is how parties grow in size. And we hope that we will be able to appeal to South Africans that a bigger ActionSA in Parliament will result in more action in their future.
Our politics is an interesting space. ActionSA, like others, I mean, you criticise the parties in the coalition, but you work with some of them in local coalitions, in Tshwane, for example. Do you think the way that we are at the moment, I mean, do you have any intention of ActionSA of changing any of the coalitions that you're working with, or are you happy with how things are going in Tshwane and some other places?
Well, we've adopted a philosophy changing after the 2024 elections to say we have to be flexible to work with whichever configuration of political parties will deliver the best services and stability in a given municipalities. In the past, we attached ourselves to a particular set of parties, and it was disastrous, and the evidence in Tshwane is all around us in that regard. The arrangement in Tshwane is working, but we also believe it's working because we have a mayor who's providing excellent leadership in that regard, and I think that's where there's a huge difference, because these parties in the GNU are not changing a pattern of government, they are effectively implementing ANC government and policies of their predecessors, where ActionSA is delivering change through its leadership of that coalition in the city of Tshwane. And long may it continue, and I really hope we can get to a stage in our country where we celebrate positive improvements, regardless of the configuration of parties that deliver them.
I mean, we have seen, though, you're working with Eugene Modise of the ANC in Tshwane. He faces not criminal charges at this point, but certainly evidence against him of some kind of criminality involving, in fact, the misuse or the misappropriation of contracts in Tshwane. You do run the risk of actually finding yourselves really affected by that, being tarnished by it in some way if those turn out to be true.
Well, of course, but at the end of the day, in politics, what we have to demonstrate is leadership. And leadership means that when these things happen, there are actions that are taken by the leaders of your party that demonstrate we are serious about these issues. The issues that you refer to have been the subject of an independent investigation. A process has now been initiated for a multi-party committee in the city of Tshwane to investigate and come to a conclusion on that particular matter. And this demonstrates a party that is not sweeping matters under the carpet, but is taking responsibilities seriously in that regard. I need to also point out, and I'm certainly not the spokesperson of the ANC, the subject of this interview is actually being very critical of the ANC. But a lot has been said by the DA in respect of that matter, which is patently untrue. A big part of the issue that is under investigation is about the disclosures of interests of that particular councillor in the city of Tshwane. And I'd be at pains to point out that the same DA is part of the GNU that gave the deputy president a 10,000 rand fine for his undisclosed diamond from Liebenberg. So I think the DA should be very careful about speaking with a forked tongue on some of these issues, given its practice in this regard.
As I say, our politics is that interesting space. In Joburg, local elections, obviously, I suspect perhaps in December, if what I think the IC's latest statement was correct. I'm sure that you'll make Nasipi Moya your candidate in Tshwane. What are you going to do in Joburg? You're going to take on Helen Zille?
Well, certainly, and I don't think it's nearly the mammoth task that people are referring to, because the idea that someone did something 20 years ago and 1,800 kilometers away is not something that qualifies you to be effective in the scope of Johannesburg. Cape Town and Johannesburg are vastly different cities, and if people don't understand that, then they don't understand Joburg. At the end of the day, ActionSA is a party that is led by the only person who has successfully turned Johannesburg around. The 3 years in which Herman Mashaba was the mayor of Johannesburg, there were real changes taking place in that city. There was cutting of non-essential expenditure. There was increased investment in infrastructure. Electricity outages were coming down despite load shedding being so prevalent at the time. Water losses were coming down. The road index was improving. An anti-corruption unit was making real inroads against corrupt individuals in the city. JMPD was being expanded by 50%. So all of these changes are the kind of DNA of ActionSA, and that is what we're going to put forward in terms of an offer to the people of Johannesburg.
With the help and support of the DA, of whose mayor he was at the time, obviously.
Well, if anyone bothers to read the Constitution, they're going to struggle to find the part where political parties lead municipalities. It refers to the executive mayor. Okay. And the mayor provides that leadership, and if you care to understand what took place during that time, one would have noted that Herman Mashaba achieved all those things, notwithstanding his own party cutting the legs out from under him the entire time. You will recall they were the ones that installed the ANC when he left, and they're going to have to answer for that too.
Micheal Beaumont, thank you. Good to discuss politics with you. Do appreciate it. Micheal Beaumont is the chair of ActionSA.